I'm Steve Walker. Welcome to Integrity and Joy. This is our first podcast episode. Today I'll be talking about integrity, what it really means, and why it's so important for us as individuals and for us as a society, especially now. So welcome to the first episode of Integrity and Joy. I am Steve Walker. I'm a former U.S. diplomat, activist, educator, now life coach, meditation teacher. I do some consulting still in the education world. And I've had a really interesting life. It's taken a lot of interesting twists and turns, very unpredictable. We moved a lot when I was a kid. I'll probably talk about my childhood at some point. After college and a year of grad school, I went into the U.S. Foreign Service, which is our diplomatic corps, and lived overseas a couple of times, a couple of tours in Washington, a year as a fellow at Columbia University. And then I quit publicly over the genocide in Bosnia. There was a genocide in Bosnia in the early 1990s, and three of us in the State Department quit publicly within a couple of weeks of each other to protest U.S. complicity in that genocide. And that changed my life. Didn't just end my career in the State Department, but, that act of integrity, you can see as a direct line to this podcast, right? The name of my company, the name of the podcast. So that was pretty profound. And then two of us ended up leading the Save Bosnia activism campaign, which contributed, at least in some small part, to ending the genocide in Bosnia. And then I went into teaching, and I did that for 25 years, including the last 8 as director of the innovative lab school that I taught in for most of my career, the life school, learning interdependently from experience. That extraordinary program changed many kids' lives, and it changed my life. And I'll talk about that at some point too. And because education is not only near and dear to me, but we've got to figure out how to fix education in this country and around the world if we're going to deal with the many problems and challenges that we have. We're not doing a good enough job. We're not doing a good enough job raising our kids and preparing them for the world that they're already living in, never mind the one they're going to be living in. And then I started, a couple of years ago, I started up this life coaching and meditation teaching business, and I've been doing it full time for a little over a year. And I live in the Boston area, and I've been married and divorced twice. I'm proud dad of 2 wonderful women in their late 20s. And you can see that this is an unusual path, right? It's not a straight line for the most part. The integrity strain hopefully is, but other than that, if you'd asked me when I was 16 or 17, hey, how do you think your life's going to play out? It would not have been married and divorced twice, foreign service, quit publicly, activist, none of that. I wouldn't have imagined any of it. I was going to be a marine biologist. So I think that's true for a lot of us, that, life is unpredictable and we don't have a plan. And if you do, life is going to change that plan for you at some point. But the thing is that I've found this certainly in my life coaching, but also with the many students that I've taught and alumni that I've helped over the years, that a lot of us feel unprepared, or at least underprepared, for adulthood and for all of these challenges and for figuring out our purpose and what we want to do with our lives and relationships and personal finance and all that. And we think everybody else knows what they're doing and that we don't. And so we suffer in silence a lot. And that's a real tragedy. So this podcast, as well as my life coaching and masterminds that I offer, kind of group coaching situations, is an attempt to give people some help and that we can all figure out together and learn from each other how to live life, how to have a good life, how to have healthy relationships, how to build wealth and not debt, all of it. And so, I hope this will be a conversation. I hope you'll leave comments wherever you found this podcast. I hope you'll follow me on social media at Integrity and Joy on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and LinkedIn, and let me know what you like and what you don't, and what you want to hear more of, and what questions you want me to address. If there are guests that you think would be interesting to have on, and we can make this an ongoing conversation, because I want this. The purpose of this is to be helpful to you. Period. Full stop. That's it. That's the reason why I'm doing this. So, and I can only really be that if we're in conversation with one another. So I thank you in advance for that. And please share this podcast also with anybody you know who might benefit from it or be interested in it. I wanted to start off by talking about integrity, because it's been really important in my life, and I think it's one of the key things to having a good life. But I think oftentimes we don't really think about or understand what that really means. It's so important to me. It's in the name of my company and this podcast, right? Integrity and Joy. And it's a big point of emphasis in one of my favorite books, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, which if you haven't read, I really strongly urge you to do so. It's a beautiful little book. And the Four Agreements are these four agreements that Don Miguel says, if we can keep these four agreements that are being passed down as part of ancient Toltec wisdom, then we can have a better life. The four agreements themselves are: be impeccable with your word, don't make assumptions, don't take anything personally, and always do your best. And at some point I'll probably do a podcast that's just on the four agreements, because it's just such a magnificent book. But the first one, with reason, is be impeccable with your word. Say what you mean what you say, use your word for good, not ill. It's part of integrity. And it's a foundational thing, so much so that it's the first agreement. And that's part of it, right, is kind of that honesty part, that you should be honest. You should say what you really mean, and you shouldn't lie. But also, I think that part about using your word for good, not ill. A lot of times that's not really understood or followed by a lot of people. You can think you're an honest person, but if you're gossiping about people behind their backs all the time, that's not really a good thing. You're not being impeccable with your word. You're causing harm with what you say. Not only for the person that you're gossiping about, it's disrespectful, and at some point they may find out, probably will, that you're gossiping behind their back, or trashing them, or criticizing them behind their back, and they're going to feel betrayed, and it's going to break down trust in that relationship. But also, the people that you're gossiping with or to, what do you think they're thinking? Probably the same thing you are, that, boy, this person who's gossiping with me, I can't really trust them. You're showing that you lack integrity, that you can't be trusted to be really honest and loving and kind and compassionate with other people. And so you probably shouldn't do it. And it also makes you worry more about what other people think about you, and having a lot of anxiety or stress about that if you're gossiping or trash talking other people behind their back, because you're going to be worried, at least subconsciously, that they're doing the same to you. And that they're not being honest to your face. So don't do it, right? Be impeccable with your word. The other part about integrity, or another part about integrity, and this maybe for me is one of the core parts of it, maybe the core part of it, and one of the things that has guided me much of my life, is that we need to get clarity about our values and beliefs, like our core values and beliefs. What are those values that really matter to you? What are those beliefs, those fundamental beliefs that really matter to you, that forge the way you look at the world, your paradigms? And if we can get clarity about those values and beliefs, and then try to live consistent with them every day. And we're going to make mistakes. This isn't about being perfect. But we really try every day to live with integrity, to live consistent with our values and beliefs. Then life becomes easier. When you face moral dilemmas, when you face difficult situations, you'll find it easier to do the right thing, to do something that you feel good about, that doesn't feel hypocritical, that feels like it's going to build healthier relationships, that it's going to help you create better circumstances for your life moving forward, get a better job, build a stronger business. Because you will have better decision making, and other people will know that you are reliable and consistent. And people like that. People like to know that people and businesses and things are consistent and reliable and trustworthy. And if you have clarity about your core values, if you have clarity about your core beliefs, and you try to live consistent with them when you make decisions big and small every day, when you interact with people in your life, whether it's a customer or your life partner, your spouse, a kid, your parent, whoever it is, then you'll have less stress and anxiety because you'll know how to make these decisions, just be consistent with your values. And other people will be drawn to you and will come to admire and respect you and treat you with respect and probably treat you with more integrity and honesty. And so that's huge. When I quit the State Department over Bosnia, one of the things that someone said to me right afterwards was, wow, you just did one of the greatest public acts of integrity by giving up your career over your principles and values. And most people will take your call. Like you could reach out to almost anybody and ask them to help you with this cause, and they'll take your call at least. And most people will have a tough time turning you down because you're the guy with integrity. They know that you say what you mean and mean what you say, and that you're standing by your principles, and they will then feel like they need to honor that, and they want to honor that and have respect for it, and they will be drawn to do the same themselves. And so it'll be easier for you to get support, get people to donate money, to participate in your activism. And it was true. It was absolutely true. So it was a powerful lesson for me that your integrity is maybe your greatest possession, and no one can take it from you. But once you give it away, it's really hard to get back, actually. Like when you violate your integrity, people stop trusting you as much, if at all. And it's really hard to get it back. That trust has to be earned back. And that lack of integrity that you had is going to be there in the back of their minds for a long time, maybe forever. And it doesn't mean you can't overcome it. It doesn't mean that you can't repair a relationship that has been violated by a lack of integrity on your part or the other person's part. But it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time, a lot of patience. So don't go down that path. Act with integrity. And you'll reap tremendous benefits. Now, I know some of you may be saying to yourselves, like, this guy's talking about integrity. Sounds so old-fashioned. Like, isn't he paying attention to what's going on around us in society? Doesn't he see who just got reelected to the presidency in the United States a couple of weeks ago? Yes, I'm paying attention. I'm not being some Pollyannish idealist. I actually think what's going on right now in society and what's going on politically in the United States makes integrity even more relevant and more important. It has to be job number one for each and every one of us now, because there is an erosion, a collapse even, you might say, in the faith and trust in the integrity of our core institutions, the government, mainstream media, our politicians and leaders, business leaders, and in each other, right? One of the reasons that it's difficult to have conversations about politics and other things in society with family members and friends is that sometimes it feels like we're living in alternate universes based on different facts, right? Different ways of looking at reality. And that's because there is such a breakdown in our faith and belief in the integrity of each other and these institutions, but also some of the institutions and people are lacking in integrity. PolitiFact at one point found that Donald Trump misrepresents the truth or lies 76% of the time. The Washington Post fact checkers during his first term found that he said things that weren't true an average of 21 times a day. Right? Fox News has been shown in court to have lied. So, like, that's problematic, right? There are politicians, Democrats and Republicans, who have lied, sure, and who have been corrupt, absolutely, right? But that doesn't mean that we should normalize that behavior or embrace it. It doesn't mean that we should spread the lies. It doesn't mean that we become absolved of making sure that we're trying to find out what actually is happening, right? To find reliable news sources, to not listen to or repeat sources that we're not sure of, right? Or we know to be problematic, right? Or to suggest that, oh, the government is worthless now because, there's corruption, there's waste and fraud, and there's dishonest politicians. Those statements are true to some extent, right? Are there dishonest politicians? Yes. Is there waste, fraud, abuse in the government? Yeah, probably at all levels, right? But not to the extent that gets portrayed. Like, for the most part, most people who work in the government are good, honest people, fellow Americans who are trying to do a good job and serve their country or their state or their town or their county, right? That the government does a lot of good. It builds bridges and tunnels and airports, and it keeps our food safe, relatively speaking, and pharmaceuticals, and it tries to make sure that there's a safety net for people, so people get Social Security checks every month, and you have Medicare and Medicaid, which saves people's lives and makes people's lives better. And those things all happen every day, and we take them for granted. So what do we do about this situation? Because it's a crisis right now. Well, first and foremost, let's commit that job number one for each of us and for us as a society is to live with integrity. Job number one. We're going to be people of integrity. We're going to say what we mean and mean what we say. We're going to try and be honest and accurate. We're not going to spread things that we don't know to be true, right? That we're going to try not to catastrophize. We're going to hold other people accountable for being honest and having integrity. We're going to try to act consistent with our values. Right? If you believe that everybody should be treated equally, then don't vote for people who treat different people differently because of their race or ethnicity or where they came from or whatever. Right? That we're going to try and hold our elected officials and the media and other people on social media accountable to being honest, right? And to having integrity. We have to restore our faith in ourselves and in each other and in these core institutions. The alternative is horrifying, right? Just because there are problems with the government doesn't mean we should abolish it or destroy it, right? Like, that would be catastrophic. Or it doesn't mean that we should go to authoritarianism where one person has virtually all the power in society or can abuse it and limit people's rights. No, that would be terrible. I lived in the Soviet Union when it was towards the end of its time. It was not a good place to live. You don't want to live in a place like that. Trust me. We need to protect democracy. We need to protect and restore our faith in these core institutions, in freedom, right? In people's rights being protected, in equality, fairness, right? Just because we've got a problem in this country with big money, corporations, wealthy people having too much power and influence doesn't mean we should then normalize Elon Musk and what's happening right now. Right? That's going the opposite direction. We need to actually fix the system. We need to have campaign finance reform. So let's make integrity job number one for ourselves, for each other, for our society, for our leaders. Job number one. If not, then we've got bigger problems coming. Right? We're going to fracture more. And we're going to be more prone to following demagogues and people who want to take advantage of our cynicism. Now, here's the really good news, and it's one of the main reasons why I started this podcast. We are at a crossroads. There are people who want to take us down the path of anger and fear and hatred, cynicism, dishonesty. But there are more of us who want to take us down the path of integrity, of love, of compassion, of empathy, of kindness. There are more of us than there are of them. And some of them can be brought over to this path, right? It's a fork in the road. And we need to make sure that we're committed to going down the path of love and empathy and compassion and kindness and integrity. That has to be our mission. And there's more of us than there are of them. I swear to you. And again, we can create a movement around this. I believe that there already is. It's just hard for people to believe in it sometimes when you see what happened in the election. But that's okay. Ground yourself in these core values. Ground yourself in your integrity. Commit to living a life of integrity and love and compassion and empathy and kindness every day, and encouraging other people to do the same. Praising them, right? Expressing gratitude towards them when they do, right? Show love and compassion even for the people who are on the other side. That's a terrible way for them to live. It's not fun being filled with anger and hatred and distrust and cynicism. It's a toxic, terrible way to live. So have compassion for them, right? And that will make the path forward easier and clearer for all of us, right? That is going to win out. Love will conquer hate. Absolutely. I have no doubt about it. So join me for this ride and this conversation so that we can build a better future. So thanks for joining me for this first episode of Integrity and Joy. I hope something here resonated with you. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, leave a comment or a review, and share it with somebody else that you know who might be interested. I hope you'll also follow me on social media at Integrity and Joy. Again, I'm Steve Walker. I hope you have a great rest of your day.